There will never be another company like World Industries again. They were the skaters' version of David and Goliath, bursting onto the scene in the late 80s, waging war against the corporate giants that dominated the market and completely changed the trajectory of skateboarding in the process. There's little doubt World Industries left a mark on the sport like few ever will. But they definitely crossed a few lines to get there. In fact, they didn't just cross them. They casually kick-flipped over and took a big steaming dump on the other side.
Just can't take anything too seriously.
Their controversial and lawless rule opened the floodgates for some of the craziest moments in skating history. They proudly created some of the most offensive board graphics you've ever laid eyes on, laughed in the face of lawsuits, and cooked up a magazine that will go down as one of the gnarliest publications ever printed.
I'm outraged at this.
Whether it was morally right or wrong, it didn't seem to matter, as World Industries would rise up and become the biggest company in skateboarding history, commanding a 30% market share by 1998. But the good times wouldn't last forever, and their controversial strategy would eventually backfire.
If you set up your business ethos as like, fuck everyone and everything, you're gonna get fucked eventually.
By the turn of the millennium, a chain of events would unravel that would drag the company into a downward spiral from which it would never recover. It makes you wonder, what in the world happened to Industries? And how did they become the most shocking skate brand ever created? They say that success has a lot to do with good timing, and this was certainly the case for World Industries. You see, their unprecedented rise to power was closely tied to the arrival of street skating.
For those people who don't know what street style is all about, can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's just skating on ramps and stuff, little obstacles, like mainly, I guess, just anywhere on the street.
By the mid-'80s, skateboarding had fallen into two distinct categories. Vert, the art of riding near vertical surfaces like ramps or half-pipes, and freestyle, focusing on flat ground tricks and manipulating the board in a routine. But skaters began to leave the swimming pools and skate parks behind, bringing their skating to the streets. It was a fundamental shift in how people were skating, and no one saw this change coming better than a 27-year-old Steve Rocco. Growing up, Rocco didn't have access to swimming pools or ramps, and instead began applying his freestyle tricks to the streets.
Rocco was a pioneer in the street skating movement. You know, he rode a freestyle board, but he was doing stuff on curb cuts, and he was kind of blending it into what became street skating.
For the best part of a decade, Rocco had been one of the top freestyle skaters of his time.
The dudes that I looked up to in the magazines all skated together, and Rocco made them look. He was on another level, to put it mildly, and he let them know.
Sponsored by Sims, he'd spent his 20s bouncing around the country, showing up at freestyle competitions and skate demos. By 1986, it was blindingly obvious to Rocco that there was a monumental shift happening within skateboarding. He even said so in this Trans World article. Along with Mike Vallely, Mark Gonzalez, and Natas Kalpas, he approached Santa Cruz with the idea of creating a company solely focusing on street skating. But Santa Cruz would immediately reject their proposal and instead alert Vision of Rocco's potential rebellion, which would lead to him losing his sponsorship and role as the team manager. Unsponsored and out of options, Rocco was facing the grim reality of heading back to his parents' home one night while having dinner with Skip Engblom, the dude behind the skate company called Santa Monica Airlines. Rocco explained how his career was coming to an end.
Skip goes, no, it's never over. Don't worry about it. No big deal. He goes, meet me tomorrow, cash out your credit card for as much money as you have, and I'll show you how to make money.
Skip would take Rocco to an old carpentry shop where he would invest his life savings in a run of 500 skateboards. Within 3 weeks, he would sell them all, doubling his original $6,000 investment. This would be a pivotal moment for Rocco and his new company, and a handful of rebrands later, World Industries was born. With boards in production, he would begin to recruit riders to represent his company. Jesse Martinez was the first to sign up, sold on the $2 board royalties, twice the industry standard at the time. Rodney Mullen would also join the new company, becoming a partner in the business and investing vital cash needed to keep the venture afloat.
To me, a business partner was anybody that, just had excess cash, gullibility, and absenteeism. Rodney had all of them.
Even from the start, World Industries wouldn't take themselves or anything seriously. They quickly became known for a zero fucks given attitude that spoke directly to the minds of young skaters. In fact, the whole thing was built on the concept that if it pissed the parents off, chances are the teenagers would love it. Look, it was a refreshing change to the big skate brands, which had more in common with Wall Street corporations than the counterculture movement of skateboarding. Powell Peralta, the biggest name of its day, even had an 11-page user manual for their team, instructing their skaters how to act, look, and even dress. The strict rules and soulless culture would be the reasons why elite-level skaters like Mike Vallely would defect to World. In '89, Mike V's first World Industries Pro model hit the shelves, a revolutionary board that would change everything. The Barnyard was created as the result of Rocco's belief in the future of switch skating.
I had seen Mark Gonzalez skate switch stance.
Yep.
I had dabbled a little bit with switch tricks, but Rocco believed in skating in both directions as a future of skateboarding.
This, combined with Rodney Mullen's visionary board shaping skills, lay the foundations for what many consider to be the first double kickboard.
This is something a lot of people, just don't even know or don't even want to admit, but basically Rodney invented today's modern board shape, period. And it all started with the Mike Vallely Animal Farm board.
And then there's the graphic. The brightly colored cartoons were a clear departure from the death and gore imagery of the 80s, introducing an element of wit and humor that had never been seen on the bottom of a skateboard before. The Barnyard hit hard and became the company's top-selling model.
The board just went. It's the best-selling board I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah, the royalty checks I got.
It's embarrassing. Yeah, seriously.
Embarrassing, yeah, embarrassing.
The success inspired more riders to flock to World Industries, allowing Rocco to amass an army of legendary street skaters.
He gained so much of the industry. He owned basically 70% of the skateboarders that mattered.
Yeah.
Maybe more. Maybe 90% of the skateboarders mattered.
Rocco would scoop up the emerging superstars that were being overlooked by the big corporations, signing young riders with promises of creating their own companies. Mark Gonzalez would leave Vision and set up Blind in 1990, while Natas Kopas and Mike Ternaski also went on to build brands under the World Industries umbrella. And even if skaters weren't running their own thing, Rocco would make sure his teams were well looked after.
He was like a big old uncle, you know what I'm saying? Like, with hella money. He could just throw it at us, out the window, you know what I mean?
He'd offer generous royalties on skateboard sales, put them up in 5-star hotels, and foot the bill on some serious shopping sprees.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some CDs, and he hands me his credit card, and he goes, get as many as you want, get whatever you want. And I go down to the store, and I get like 40 CDs, put them on his credit card, and I come back, and then he calls the credit card company, says his card was stolen, and he cancels it. It's always like shit like that, always going on, man.
By 1990, World Industries had become more successful than anyone could have expected. These once unknown teen street skaters were suddenly making more money than they knew what to do with.
That was cool. I wasn't tripping. I was buying a car every month. I had a new car, 100 of them. I'm buying them all the time.
The rapid success of World Industries shocked everyone, including the big brands. Their resistance to adopting the trend of street skating had left the door wide open for Rocco, and now, threatened by his success, they attempted to sabotage World's progress. Santa Cruz would start a $20,000 legal dispute over naming rights, and Vision would attempt to disrupt supply by blackmailing distributors into boycotting World Industries products. Powell Peralta's campaign was more public, running ads that threw shade at independent skate companies and taking shots at the riders who skated for them. Understandably, Rocco was pretty pissed on that last one and vowed to strike back.
Before it was fun, but now I had like a mission. My mission is to destroy George.
The death blow would be delivered with the creation of their spoof boards. a parody of Powell Peralta's most popular graphics that were just different enough to avoid a lawsuit, but close enough that it was a giant middle finger in the face of the company. Armed with a single advert and 3 graphics, Rocco successfully destroyed the biggest name in skateboarding. The campaign would cause Powell's sales to plummet, while World Industries would skyrocket to new heights. But that was just the tip of the extremely controversial iceberg that was World Industries board graphics. Topping the list as some of the most offensive designs you'll ever see was Chico Brenes' Pro model, as well as basically anything that was made for Javante Turner. In both cases, Brenes and Turner came up with these ideas, and although any other company wouldn't touch this shit with a 10-foot pole, the outrage was too good for World to pass up. But look, if a bit of casual racism wasn't your thing, then there were plenty of other designs like the Accidental Death, Censorship, and Devilboard to stir up some outrage. The latter was designed for Jason Lee, but he deemed it too offensive, even after Rocco offered him $10,000 to use it.
Oh man, are you serious? 10,000? Oh, that was so much money to me.
Copyright never worried World Industries either, and trademark infringements were laughed at on a weekly basis. The company would receive cease and desist notices from Disney, Burger King, Hell's Angels, Jimi Hendrix, and Nintendo. But none of that bothered World Industries. They proudly displayed the letters as magazine ads or hung them as trophies on their office walls.
Here's a cease and desist from Dr. Seuss. And what the fuck's he gonna do? He's like 80 years old. Was he gonna beat us up?
It was a ballsy move, but World was moving too fast for anyone to keep up. By the time the cease and desist letters would arrive, the company had already sold all the boards and moved on to the next controversial design. Everything they did echoed that zero fucks given attitude of rebellious adolescence. But things were starting to get out of control.
Jesus Christ, that's terrible!
Rocco had given the kids the keys to the castle, and it was starting to get messy. Smoking, drinking, and vandalism were a daily occurrence at the World Skate Park. Even more disturbingly, there was talk of some darker shit going on.
I'll straight out say it. I know you got like hookers and prostitutes for 13-year-old kids to get them off other teams.
But World Industries wasn't trying to hide that stuff. Instead, they would proudly broadcast their exploits in their highly controversial publication, Big Brother magazine.
Well, here's something your children may be reading that you should definitely know about. It's a shocking magazine. It tells you how to commit suicide. It tells you all about drug use, and also explicit descriptions of sex.
If what they were doing was wrong, it didn't seem to impact their success. In fact, by the early 90s, World Industries had risen to the top and seemed to be untouchable. Little did anyone realize that was all about to change. In the early 90s, pro skaters began leaving World and its subsidiary brands en masse. Some, like Mark Gonzalez, didn't agree with World facilitating substances for the younger riders. Others, like Mike Vallely, wanted nothing to do with the company's agenda.
The politics bored me. Steve's disrespect for the sport disgusted me. And in my heart, I knew I couldn't remain a part of World Industries in good faith.
A few even had personal beef with Rocco.
My model girlfriend slept with Rocco. Steve Rocco.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was like, what the fuck, dude?
While others began to believe that they were getting ripped off on their royalty checks. During a World Industries tour in '93, and with no prior warning, a bunch of their riders would turn up to the demos riding boards and wearing apparel for their new brand, Girl. The message was clear. They no longer rode for Rocco or World, and with that, the company would lose a majority of its pro riders virtually overnight. By 1995, things weren't looking good for World Industries. In just a few years, the company had gone from banking $10 million a year to struggling to keep their doors open. They would be forced to sell 25% of the company to their Japanese distributor just to stay afloat. But just when it all looked like it was over, something unexpected happened. Inspired by a devil doodle, an epiphany came to Rocco on how they could save their struggling company. Devil Man, along with Flame Boy and Wet Willie, would become the new face of World Industries. Their new cartoon animation of Hellfire versus Holy Water still embodied the spirit of World Industries, yet at the same time allowed them to pivot their target demographic from older teens to younger kids. It was a genius move. Not only would they cater to the massively untapped market of preteen skaters, but it would also alleviate their reliance on team riders as well as the need to pay royalties on pro boards. Flame Boy and Wet Willie's popularity exploded with young skaters. And by 1998, World Industries would once again reclaim their spot as the leading skate brand, reaching unprecedented levels of sales.
He threw out 10 grand in cash out of a fucking helicopter over the X Games. And like half of it went into the bay. It was nuts.
While it might have secured World Industries' future, not everyone was stoked on the whole thing. By appealing to a younger audience and selling their boards at department stores, they had created mass market appeal, and World Industries had become the very thing they were rebelling against just a decade earlier. Their culture moved from the Wild West of skateboarding to a commercialized corporation run by accountants. Not only that, but besides ESPN and the X Games, many skaters point the finger at World Industries as one of the biggest culprits for the commercialization of the sport. In 1998, and with sales at an all-time high, Rocco and Mullen would sell World Industries for a cool $29 million evaluation. It was a savvy move, and one that would make the founders overnight millionaires. After they parted ways with World, the company changed hands 3 more times, with each new ownership reducing the brand into a more hollow version of its former self. The World image would be cleaned up, stepping away from anything even slightly controversial and spending the next 20 years in an endless cycle of Wet Willie and the Flame Boy graphics. Besides their range of low-quality, high-volume skateboards, they also dabbled with slapping their logo on skis, snowboards, wakeboards, and water skis. The World Industries we once knew might be long gone, which is probably for the best. But there's no doubt this company left a mark like no other. Sure, they pissed a ton of people off, but if you look closely, they did some pretty good stuff too.
Rocco changed the very landscape of skateboarding to give us all opportunities that we would have never otherwise had.
Not only that, but they were also one of the first companies to give skaters of color equal opportunities, as well as offering their riders medical coverage, generous royalty payments, and stock options. Whether you love them or hate them, one thing we can all agree on is that there will never be a skate company quite like World Industries again.
Warning. The Project World Industries has unexpectedly quit. Please install new version of Team, rename, and restart.